There's accumulated money, there's lifestyle money, and there's transfers, right? So lifestyle, accumulated money is what people think of where we're investing. Most institutions want to know how much you got. We can do better. Why don't you give your money to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the problem with that is the only person whose money is at risk is yours. All right. The second type of money is lifestyle money. So that's the people that say can't go on vacation, can't go on Starbucks,
right,
live in a sackcloth and grow your own food. Right? So the third type of money is transfer. So the transfer, so this is where I live, right? A transfer is helping people identify money that they're losing unknowingly and unnecessarily. So if it's unknown, if you find out, that means you can stop it, right? And so there's like 15 or 20, but I'm gonna give you the 5, right? So in addition to wealth, cash flow management, there's how you pay your mortgages, okay? Taxes, how you fund qualified plans, how you pay for educational expenses, and how people pay for what we call major capital purchases.
Your relationship with money matters. I'm Michelle Perkins, and this is the Money and You podcast, where I will be breaking down your relationship with money, offering tough love money tips, and a money dating plan that will focus on lifting the barriers to success to help pave the way for better money practices and increased wealth. It's time to take control to live a limit-free life. It starts today. Hello, and welcome to the Limit-Free Life show. The Money and You show. I still get confused with the show I did 2 years ago. So, Money and You show with me, Michelle Perkins, your host, broadcasting here from ubngo.com in Burbank, California. Very happy to have a fabulous guest with us today. And you're going to learn a lot. You're going to learn how to tell your money where to go. And I can't wait to get into all kinds of very interesting money topics with Curtis May. I'm going to tell you a little about Curtis. Today's guest, Curtis May, is the host of the Practical Wealth Show podcast and the creator and owner of Practical Wealth Advisors. Curtis has been planning for individuals for more than 35 years, and he's passionate about helping his clients save money and live the very best life they can right now. The primary focus of his financial planning firm is to help individuals and families become financially free by following the principles of wealth creation that have endured for centuries around the world. Welcome, Curtis.
Thank you.
I'm so happy to have you here. We had a great conversation over the phone, and I really have been looking forward to having you as a guest on the show. A lot of the things that we talked about, I think the audience will love hearing. So tell us a little about, you've been doing this for a long time now. Tell us kind of how and why you decided to go this route in your career.
So I basically had 2 careers, right? In one, so I started early. I was like 21. I was in college. I realized the NBA was not looking for 5'11" shooting guards. And I got my insurance license in college. And then I was kind of like my first iteration. I was what I call a typical advisor. And I was like Dave Ramsey on steroids, right? And buy term investor difference, buy and hold, dollar cost average. What we in our process is affectionately call the accumulation theory, right? And then, so I did that. And then around 1990, 2000, I had an epiphany. I read a little purple book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I'm like, what he's talking about and what I'm doing are different. So now I'm confused for a bunch of, and then 9/11 happened. And so I kind of lost my religion with equities as the end all be all of everything with the stock market. So I had to kind of figure it out. But now part 2, for probably the last 12, 13 years, I've been teaching, I don't even know what to call it. We call it now the principles-based planning. If what you might have heard, some of you artists may have heard of infinite banking, and I've kind of married a principles-based approach to a strategy called IBC. And so now we've come up with the framework of principles drive strategy, and strategy drives tactics. Tactics are products that you may buy, but it's not about the products. It's really about how you think. And it took me a minute to come to that. So long story short, that's my story. I'm sticking to
it. I love that. And I really, I enjoy hearing that people had kind of a change of heart and we're doing something. We have a lot of guests on who were doing something. And you started, and it was kind of the way they had been taught to do things, and then had a bit of an epiphany and changed it up. And I really feel like that shows your passion for this work, because you could just keep making money doing, what you were doing, but you saw the light kind of, and you figured you could help people in better ways.
Yeah, I always try to challenge my convictions, right? So you don't want to get stuck in one thing. And, what's the best thing for our clients? So am I doing the right thing? So I constantly question that. And, so I can make sure, because how you judge success. See, some people judge success by the revenue or assets under management. And how I judge success is, or we've learned to, is, are my clients winning? Are my clients becoming financially independent? That's the goal. Are they becoming more economically? So the transformation I try to help people make, I was playing with this. What do I actually do? My goal is to help them go from financial dependence to financial independence.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or what I call economic, I got this from Dan Sullivan, economic childhood to economic adulthood. Right. So
that.
Childhood, you're dependent on bureaucracies, on jobs, on prepackaged investments. Whereas an economic adult, you're more entrepreneurial. You don't have to be an entrepreneur, but you need to be an entrepreneurial thinker in terms of take control of your life, take control of where you deploy your capital. I don't even want to say investing. I want to say, where do you deploy your capital? Because an investing is a plan, and investing is, and I'll come off this rant, investing is becoming something. It's not about buying something. Everybody wants you to tell them what to do, but they don't want to become. They don't want to, because they always want to be able to blame somebody else if it doesn't work out. And so economic adult doesn't do that, because you've done enough research, because invest is short for, one of the words it's short for is to investigate, right? To cover fully. And one of the things when people say, well, what should I invest in? Because I don't give investment advice. I tell people, look, I'm the defensive coordinator. I'm here to make sure you don't lose money, right? You need to go to your coach, your whoever, to show you how to, that's offense. And I've decided I don't want to, defense wins championships, right? So I want you to me, not losing is winning. And what we focus on, Michelle, is efficiency. See, if you want to create maximum wealth, you have to create maximum efficiency first. So stop giving money away. And that's kind of what I've learned, to take the opposite tact that everybody else is doing. Everybody's chasing down investments. I want to show you how to invest in your number one asset, which is in between your two ears. Yeah. Save up money so that when you see something that you like, you have the money to do it. Yeah. And it generates cash flow, right? Because you can't eat equity. People focus on net worth. You can't eat equity, right? So I want you to, what allows you to go to the beach and stay at the beach is cash flow, right?
Yeah, I definitely want to talk more about cash flow. I want to talk more about infinite banking. I'd like to talk about that cat I see back there.
I know. Like,
no. You didn't have to do that. I was enjoying the cat. Anyway, yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. I know. I like the language that's been shifting in the world of finance. I've been around a while, and it used to be all about just building for retirement. That was all anybody talked about, save for retirement, get ready for retirement. Everything was about retirement. And I love what you're talking about, which is much more aligned with, my mission, which is independence. I mean, retire, don't retire, just to have the wherewithal and the independence to be able to make your own choices, whatever is right for you.
Because retirement is an age, right? Yeah, and the definition of retirement is to withdraw or to put out of use. So I ask people, is that what you want? Do you want to be put out of use? And but financial freedom is a capability, right? And so it doesn't matter if you do it right, you could be financially free and 3, 5, 10 years or less, right? If you maintain the right focus, which is generating passive income greater than your expenses. So once you decide what you want to be when you grow up, financially, that literally dictates what you put your money into. Because so we've been trained to invest by the institutions for capital gains. You're in it for the long haul, buy and hold, what we call, dollar cost average, get out of debt, pay your mortgage off early. All that's the accumulation theory, and that's been designed by the financial institutions, right? But that's not what they do, is it? Okay. They literally do the complete opposite with their own money. They teach us one thing and they do another. And I'm not calling them out. I think that the consumer, because it's your money, if you're an adult, you want to know better and you want to be in control, right? And so how do they get you, Michelle, to do what they want you to do? Because what are the 4 rules of the financial institutions? They want your money. They want it on a regular basis. They want to keep it as long as possible. And when do they want to give it back? As slow as possible, if ever, right? But you want to become financially free, but their advice is not designed to generate cash flow for you. It's designed to generate fees for them. So now, if you don't want control of that, that's all right. That's your choice. But I think that my philosophy is that I want to let you know that there are alternatives to the status quo. And then whether you want to walk through that door or not, that's up to you, but I don't want you to not know. So that's kind of how we approach it.
Yeah, and that's also a huge thing, is the world doesn't know what their options are. And so it's very hard to go outside the norm, because that's something at least we know. There's some proof that it works, and but so
I would argue there's no proof that it works.
Okay.
And what's the guy? Earl Nightingale said, listen, if everybody's doing something, if you don't know the right way, if you do what everybody else is doing, if you do the opposite of what everybody else is doing, you're in the right direction, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a 99% and a 1%, and there's a reason why they're 1%. And it's not that there's anything wrong going on. It's just that they know stuff that's not actually uncommon knowledge, but it takes a little bit of work, a little bit of education, a little bit of discipline. And that's kind of what I found out, and it honestly, it pissed me off. So I'm kind of like the Pied Piper for, hey, take control of your money. Hey, read a book, hey, read 10, 12 pages a day, get control of your money. And that's all I really try to do, is to empower people to think. I don't want to tell you what to think. You're grown. I always tell people, it's your money. I'm the guide, right? I'm just letting you know, hey, and read a book, right? So if you read, starting with like the Rich Dad Poor Dad, but if you read The Millionaire Next Door, he'll ask, well, how many of you, I had it written down somewhere, but how many of them give credit for their stockbroker or their wealth manager for them being a millionaire? It's like 11%. Like they got it because they had a business. Most of them were in business. They build business, they bought real estate, they got something that they love that they can make a profit in, and they did that. So most of the money comes from being involved in their own enterprise. That's proven. It's work. Most people aren't going to do it, but most people who are if that's what you aspire to, that's what they do. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Success leaves clues.
Very interesting. Yeah, success leaves clues. That's so true. Okay, well, let's get into it a little bit. So telling your money where to go instead of asking where it went. I love that. That's coming from you. So can you can you flesh that out for us a little bit?
Sure. So most wealth is lost by how people manage cash flow. All right. So the game is won and lost right there. And most people don't want to be bothered. So most households, 90%, some crazy number, like don't have a budget. And so if you think about this, if you were in business, could you survive very long if you didn't track your inflow and your outgo? Right? Most people couldn't. Or would you trust a business that didn't manage that? Well, see, people have to start seeing themselves as a business. So actually, I'm not wild about budgeting, or even with unless you're hearing this, you have a business or a side business, profit and loss. So tell your money where to go instead of asking where it went means that when you look at a budget, it's a expensive tracking tool, right? But you're looking at history. And so you're like, that's like driving a car, but you're looking through the rearview mirror instead of looking through the windshield, right? So what we talk about is mapping your cash flow. So when money hits your account, you want to tell it where to go, right? So you want to say, okay, look, assign it a job, okay? And so we actually will have people have multiple accounts. Here's an income account. Here's an account for savings. Here's an account for fixed bills are bills that are predictable in both timing and amount. And here's the money for variable things that go up and down, gas money, groceries, shopping. And when people say, well, I don't know where my money goes, that's usually where it is. They just have one big account. Yeah. And they do, I think I got this term from Mike Michalowicz from a great book I would have you get just to get your mind process around this, called Thought Profit First. And, or The Richest Man in Babylon, right? Because there's a chapter in book, I have in a presentation by George Arcad, The Richest Man in Babylon. He says, if you've not acquired, he was talking to his classmates, if you've not acquired more than a bare existence in the years since we were used, it's because you have failed to learn the laws that govern wealth, or yet you do not observe them. And what are those laws? Pay yourself first. Part of all you earn is yours to keep. So that's the first thing you're telling your money what to do. You've got to pay you. Okay.
And that's hard. I mean, let's be real.
It
if you're
is hard.
A business
okay,
owner,
what's harder than that? Being broke. Okay.
True.
And so that's a principle, right? So principles don't change. The second rule is you have to spend less than you make, which goes back to cash flow mapping. So you've got to say, all right, money's coming in. Because what the challenge is, and where we start people, so I start our clients there. Let's figure out where your daggone money's going, right? Yeah. And then so it's two things. They don't manage it. And the other thing is their personal economy, what we call it, is full of wealth transfers. Okay. So what is a wealth transfer, Curtis, you say? A wealth transfer there's three types of money. There's accumulated money, there's lifestyle money, and there's transfers, right? So lifestyle, accumulated money is what people think of where we're investing. Most institutions want to know how much you got. We can do better. Why don't you give your money to us, right? So the problem with that is the only person whose money is at risk is yours, all right? The second type of money is lifestyle money. So that's the people that say, can't go on vacation, can't go on Starbucks,
right?
Live in a sackcloth and grow your own food. Right? So the third type of money is transfer. So the transfer, so this is where I live, right? A transfer is helping people identify money that they're losing unknowingly and unnecessarily. So if it's unknown, if you find out, that means you can stop it, right? And so there's like 15 or 20, but I'm gonna give you the 5, right? So in addition to wealth, cash flow management, there's how you pay your mortgages, okay? Taxes, how you fund qualified plans, how you pay for educational expenses, and how people pay for what we call major capital purchases or big ticket items. And major capital purchases, we define it as anything you can't pay for in full within your monthly cash flow. So financing. So, right. Credit cards are out of control. So there's more money lost in those 6 things I mentioned. Paying extra on your mortgage in this environment is a not the most efficient thing to do with your money. The taxes, your number one wealth transfer. And so a lot of things like funding qualified plans actually just delay taxes. They don't really save money in taxes. We're taught to put money in single use tools like a 529 or whatever, where it's locked up for 18, 20 years and you can't do anything else with it. So you've got money in little compartments that you can't use. I don't like single use products or anything. So I don't like single use anything. And then financing, which is what we'll get back to this later, but that's what kind of infinite banking thing is. 35 cents of every dollar leaves most people's houses in the form of debt to others. Right. And so those are when you break apart. I had a couple just that they were trying to be real estate investors. Literally in 15 minutes of having a conversation with them, I found 15 grand in about 12, 15 minutes of money that they were losing it wasn't really aligned with what they were trying to do, that they were tying up for 20 years. I was like, well, wait, you want to be a real estate investor? Well, why are you putting all this money above the match into your qualified plan?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't tell them what to do. I just said, let's think about that. Here's where you are, here's where you want to go. How is this activity providing you with liquidity, use control of your capital so you can finish this triplex you're working on, right? So you can buy more real estate, which will send you a check every month so you can become financially free. Because they were under 40. I says, okay, so is your plan to give up use of your money for the next 30, 25 years or so? How's that going to help you?
Very interesting.
You just have to look at, you have to take a step back and look at what you're doing and say, okay, is this helping me get from point A to point B? But so that's part of the cash flow map. You got to know, where is A, which is why we do the map. Where's your money going? Where is B? What do you want and why? What are you planning for? Right. And then because I can tell you what's important to you if I look at your tax return and your budget. I can tell you what's important to you about where your money's going.
Right. Yeah, that's very interesting. And I think it's hard for people, I think, to figure out where B should be, or where, that's something we figure out what career we want. We figure out a lot of things and we build strategy around it. And we know we want money, and we know we want, to have pots of money for a variety of things. But I think that's kind of next level is to figure out, well, what do you really want to do with that money? I think we feel oftentimes like eventually when we have a lot of money, we'll get there to figuring out what we want to do with it.
And see, again, that falls back to the accumulation theory, right? Is you're focusing in on, so for example, I have a young guy that I have calls for our clients because I'm really trying to shift their thought process, right? So we talk about cash flow, things that can make money. We call it the velocity method. He's a real estate investor, so he couldn't find any property. So he calls me. He says, Curtis, we'll talk like about once every 3 months. He'll call me and he says, on one of our calls, we talked about rental cars, right? Turo and hire car, right? Yeah. So he calls me and says, Curtis, I just bought a car. Really? What'd you get? He says, well, he bought a Nissan 2008 Nissan Sentra.
Okay.
With 120 miles on it for $6,000. Okay. He put on hire car for $38 a day. And within 2 days, it was rented, and it's been rented for about a month and a half.
Wow.
Yes. Okay.
I literally just heard about Turo. I have a client actually who would like to start doing that. I didn't know it existed. So,
and so this is another one. So the difference is from my understanding, because I'm not an expert in it. I interviewed somebody on it and I heard about it. And I have a couple clients that do it, right? So they, what did he do? Hire car takes older cars.
Okay.
Turo needs newer cars. It's got to be lower mileage, late model cars. So you can put an old car on there. So that car is making more cash flow than his property, one of his properties, right? He might make $350, $400 a month. He's got this car. So I talked to him Saturday. He says, yeah, we just bought another one. Same model. Wow. Okay. And he put it on the app Monday. Friday was rented out. And it's been out for 2 weeks. So now he's generated, if they stay, even if they average $25, 25 days a month, he's now created, first of all, it pays both cars off by March. So he's gotten all his money back. That's velocity money. How soon I get my money back? And now he's got, let's say, $1,400, $1,500 of new cash flow. I won't call it passive because he's got to do some stuff, but it's not super hard. They bring the car back, you detail it, make sure it's okay, you flow it back out there. And there's some risk because they can mess up your car, although it's insured on the app. But there's no thing as risk, but but I said, look, if you don't have real estate, he's got some, what is this thing called? Vending machines. Like, it's all about the cash flow, right? And so he told me, I says, talking to you got me thinking really about cash flow and not just accumulation, because our philosophy is that I want you to live the best life you can today, right? So I've got him managing his cash flow, we create the first thing we do is we create a checking account. We just label it your wealth capture account. So let me give you all a tactical thing. So saving is not a willpower thing. So what most people do is they earn money, they spend it, and they save what's left over. So I don't care how much money you think you have or don't have. You have to stamp part of all I earn is mine to keep on your forehead if you must, right? And I don't care how broke you are, courtesy, I don't understand. Okay, be broke. You happy broke, I'm happy for you. All right. So you got to work it out because you have to pay attention. I guarantee you it's there. It doesn't have to be because we teach 10 or 15%. I don't care if it's 5. You've got to pay yourself first. Okay. Just because you got to exercise your pay yourself first muscle. Right. Yeah. So now when we tell it where to go, first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a percentage of your income and we're just going to shift it to your wealth. We call it a wealth capture account. And what you're going to do is if you have a job, you're going to go to HR and you're going, just like you fund your 401k, you're going to fund a checking account. Now I say check, it's not going to stay there, but I'm trying to prove to you that you can pay yourself first. But it's got to be automatic. It's got to be systematic. And guess what? You'll figure out how to adjust and make do with the rest of the money without having to go into it. I've done it too many times for people.
Yeah, that is so important. I mean, the strategy is so important. The mindset around all of this is so important because for people who don't believe they can do these things for whatever reason, I mean, everything you're saying is I'll show you how to do it. I mean, if somehow people have to get and they have to switch their mindset with respect to what you're talking about too, because people are in a mindset of do certain percentages, do certain types of savings. So when you think about going a different path, it makes you feel pretty uncomfortable. And,
it's uncomfortable. I think that, but you've got to look at the results of that, right? So because you're not going to budget, you're not going to micromanage. Budget is like dieting. Nobody wants to do that. But I think if you create 4 accounts and say, okay, look, here are my fixed bills, credit cards, mortgage, subscriptions, boom, you put that in one account. The static thing is you pay yourself first, and then you have another account called your variable. And I teach people to take use a credit card, but the caveat is for the points, but you got to pay it off at the end of the month, or you can't use it. Then we're going to use a debit card. Okay. Yeah. I don't care about the fraud protection. And then you're going to say, well, okay, I need about $200 a week to cover my variable bills. Then you're going to put that in or you could get a what's that card where you recharge it?
Prepaid.
$200 on there, and you use that for your free money, your spending money, your out in the street money. Yeah. And if you run out by Thursday, oh well, it's ramen noodles until you replenish the account. And so you have to, even though you have money in other accounts, you have to have. It's a way to enforce scarcity, but it will have the habit. But what happens is when you see your money start piling up as other account, that psychologically feels good. You feel more secure because people, or the other mistake people make is they try to attack, I got all this debt, I'm not saving money, I got to attack my debt. That's stupid, okay? Because you have first rule of wealth is pay yourself first. Yeah. And see if people, when I invest, you don't invest. You don't have 3 months at least of your income in cash or in cash equivalent in savings, liquid money. You can't invest. You don't have any money. You don't have any money to lose. If you got money tied up the first time you have an event, some type of life event, right? What do you got to do? You got to go and put it on a credit card because you don't have access to your capital.
Yeah, if I want to just stop you for a second because we talked about this when we spoke before, and I think this is so important and kind of overlooked is the importance of this sequence. Like, everybody wants to know, well, I have debt, I know I should be saving, what should I do? And I frankly think if you should try to do a little of both. But I love what you're saying because so many people are in a position where they have no emergency fund. They really haven't started, doing a good job of investing or saving. They have debt. They have all kinds of things. And yet they're like, I'm going to buy a property. And, there are things that you want to do first to set yourself up, or there's a million things that people invest in sort of before.
I think you should have an enterprise, but I think that they're looking at they want to hit a home run to get out of their situation.
No, you're saying it better than I did.
I think that that's a mistake. So I'll have people go, well, I need to save, but after I do this flip or after I finish this thing, then I can really start saving. But if you're working, the first thing you have to figure out is why, you're making 50 grand a year, you're making 100 grand a year, why you are not saving $8, $10, $15,000 of your income already, right? Because that means you're not managing cash flow. So if you get new money, guess what? The savings is a symptom, right? You have the disease is you don't manage cash flow and you haven't created a system to allow you to save money. So if you get more money, you're going to spend it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's in the book Becoming Your Own Banker, Nelson Nash calls it Parkinson's Law, which means which says that expenses rise to meet income. So you have to, he calls it Whit Parkinson's Law to be successful. Like if you can't spend less than you make and pay yourself first, or pay yourself first, spend less than you make, that's the first two principles. You can't do that. Nothing. No, you can't win.
Yeah, and I think it's I'm so glad you said it the way you said it, because it's so clear, and it's especially difficult for business owners, I think, because there's this idea that the business comes first. You don't come first. The business and its success and its, sustainability comes first. And so to get to that end, a lot of times people don't pay themselves and they reinvest. The minute they seem to have more money coming in, there's more marketing to do.
That's a mistake, because the business, Mike Michalowicz in his great book, Profit First, says your business is a cash-eating monster. It'll eat all the money you give it, right? And so if you can't, so in his book, he calls it a profit account. So we use that. I kind of take that and I apply it to personal households, but we do it for the business also, right? So you should have a profit or a wealth capture account for your business. I don't care if you put away 1%. You need to be rewarded for owning the business, right? Profit, because the typical, and this is what he says, typical accounting, this is the kind of really first thing I try to get with people is because the typical GAAP accounting is revenue minus expenses equals profit, right? So profit is last, but this is just his book is really The Richest Man in Babylon for business owners. Part of all your earnings is yours to keep, right? And then if you're working, you should pay yourself a salary because your household has needs, right? You just can't plow it back into the business because, again, you'll never take it out unless you force yourself to take it out, and then your entrepreneurial muscles will kick in to do what you have to do to grow, but you have to eat. Yeah. And you have to take it out because your household. I was talking this. Which company was it? It was a daycare company. It had $1.2 million of revenue, and they were a complete mess. Bad credit, late bills, because they just had it all commingled and never paid themselves unless they just reach to the cookie jar and take out some money when they need it. But otherwise, they leave it in the business. Now, I did the same thing. I mean, our family, I grew up in business. So we had a brick and mortar. We were in a tavern business. We had a supermarket. But by the time I was in my mid to late 20s, early 30s, my father got sick. So I was running that business and this business. Wow. And I Profit First was a life changer because I learned to set aside money for profits. I learned to run payroll as a percentage of my income. I learned to set aside money for estimated taxes. Yeah. That's, it's taken me 2 years. The first year I haven't owed any taxes. Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
Because I was paying it as I go. I paid myself out of the company. And, so I still set aside like 50% of every check for taxes. So now I'm just paying off this quarter's and next quarter's estimated taxes for next year. Yeah. You see, because the business should pay all that for you. So You see, it's so much about cash flow because the business, if you read another great, I'm throwing books out because I want people to don't take my word for it, right? So I'm reading, rereading for the sixth time, The Rich Dad's Guide to Investing, which I think is the best book. Okay. And he says, listen, investing is a plan. So most people think it's exciting. It's supposed to be boring, And so one of the things I teach is that your financial plan, what do you want and why, precedes the business plan or the investment plan. Because otherwise, what do you want the business to do for you? And so what you want to do is to be a sophisticated investor. In the book, he says that's the 3 E's: education, experience, and excessive cash. Okay. And the excessive cash comes from your business. And then in the book, Rich Dad says, my businesses buy my investments. So which in this case was the real estate, because if you're working a job, you earn money, then you get taxed, and then you get to spend what's left over. But when you're in business, if you're running a good business, you earn it, you get the money, your revenue pre-tax, you can spend it / invest it, save it pre-tax, and then you take legitimate deductions and give, the government, I always say render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, but you don't have to leave them a tip, right? So you need, a strategist that can help you, do that. And because there's no loopholes, right? People, there's no loopholes, there's the law, right? And so what we don't know is we don't understand the game, Michelle. It's like I always tell people, don't hate the, what do we say? Don't hate the player, hate the game, right? So if you hear Jeff Bezos doesn't pay taxes, or Trump doesn't pay taxes, or whoever you're talking about, okay, you don't understand the law. But we were at a conference with Tom Wheelwright, which is Kiyosaki's CPA. Mm. He says the tax law, and he says if you listen to his podcast, he says it's a incentive program that tells you what does the government need, right? They need jobs. Who creates jobs? Business owners. Okay. They need housing. Who provides housing? Real estate investors. They need energy, and they need food. So if you will invest in places that helps the government do what they want done, that will minimize your taxation. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, and so people don't look at it that way as an incentive program. They want you to, it's designed for people that want to be rich. So you have to decide, do you want to be rich, poor, or middle class? That's the first step. And then you learn the game, and then you get good team. You get good advisors, that will help you. Investing is a team sport. Yeah. And I've learned, so I try to do with people is help them kind of develop out their team a little bit, but it starts with the cash flow. Back I'm off on a tangent, but it starts with getting control of the money, telling it where to go, not looking at history. Laurel Lahmeyer calls it forecasting. You want to, look at it and not invest through the rearview mirror. You want to look so your P&L. P&L looks at history, right? Yeah. You want to be able to project your income, your expenses. I had these CFOs on my show a couple weeks ago, at least a month, like 2 weeks to a month at all times. And you always want to be looking at your cash needs, your expenses coming up. Mm-hmm. And people don't look at their P&Ls. You have to watch your money. I look at my, I think you call it a money date. You have to I had somebody coin the term, have a date with your money, with you and your wife, like at least once a month, but bi-weekly would be better. So you both know what's going on and you're making plans,
100%. I have a whole money dating program that helps chaperones you on these, because people can't figure out what to do. They say a money date, well, I'll pay some bills. Well, that's not going to, it is a relationship. That's what the show is about. You have to get to know it, just like you're going to get to know a person that you're about to have a relationship with. You have to spend time. You have to pay attention. You have to care about it. All of these things are how you build a relationship.
Money has a mind of its own, Dan Kennedy says, and it goes where it's wanted. Right?
Yeah, that's great.
You can't, if you have a disdain for it, it's not going to come to you because it goes where it's wanted, right? Or where it's respected.
Yeah.
And people say, I need more money. Well, where does money come from? Money comes from creating value in the marketplace. It just doesn't show up. You got to serve people. You got to solve problems for people. You got to, and so people don't understand the relationship between income. Where does money come from? It comes from you solving problems in the marketplace. So if you don't make enough money, that means you don't have enough skills to solve enough problems for people. Yeah. It's really quite that simple. And people look for government and everybody outside themselves is why they aren't doing what they want to do. And if when you're pointing at somebody else, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you, right? And so.
No, I completely agree. But
that's what I mean by economic adulthood.
Yeah, it's true. But we don't. Just my sense of compassion for people is leaning me to say we do a terrible job of helping educate people in any of this, and so they start out at a complete disadvantage.
It's not their fault. They've never been taught this. So I'm not saying it's not out there. I had a finance course in college, like my junior year, and it's only because I was a business major. And one time I gave a talk at Penn to these this sorority, it's like sophomores, juniors, and I was like, how many of y'all, have had a finance class? There's only none of them. Like one or two of them knew. This is a class of 30, 19, 20-year-old young women. Not a clue. And they expected to come out making at least 80 grand a year out the gate, right? And I says, okay, well, then I showed them. I had this little exercise called Wealth and Potential Calculator. I said, okay, so if you make you're 19, so let's say you made just for the next 10 years you made $80,000 a year. You're going to earn $800,000. Guess how much you're not going to have in your account? And then I broke down. So, okay, let's take 25-30% out for taxes. Then you got debt. Then you got lifestyle. And out of that 800,000, it had it was something crazy, like 88,000 left, if that much, and they were shocked. I said, yeah, so you have to pay attention and because I said, look, if I gave you 800,000 ATM machine in your house where you had your next year's 10 years of income, but when it was over, if you spent it in 5 years, you were not going to ever get any other money. How would you treat that money? Oh, I'd watch it. I'd manage my cash flow. They had all these answers. I said, well, what's the difference? That's the same thing. You're just going to get it biweekly.
Yeah. Well, and thank you for that. That is perfect. There's so much to talk about. You're so entertaining to talk about money with that I'm really sad because we're about to run out of time and there's so much we haven't talked about. So I might be knocking on your door to see if you'll come back. But I just want to pivot for a minute to the kind of private banking idea, because we mentioned in the beginning, and I don't think people, at least listening to this show, necessarily have heard a lot about that. So if you could just enlighten us for a minute.
Sure. So private or privatized banking, infinite banking, it's a concept, right? And so in my framework, here's how we teach it. Principles, right, which there are 5, save, protect, legacy, liquidity, and velocity. Principles drive strategy. So infinite banking is a strategy. So it's a way of money management. And so the problem is 35 cents of every dollar leaves our households in the form of debt to others. And so one of the things where the Nelson Nash, who founded the concept, we use properly structured. I'm going to say a couple of very important things because so many people out there bastardizing the system. We use properly structured dividend paying whole life insurance with a mutual company. Okay. So that's the tactic. The product is last. Okay. So getting whole life is not infinite banking. So it's got to be structured properly. It's really a system of money management. So like if I don't get them saving money, paying themselves first and managing their cash flow, I won't let them do infinite banking. Okay. Because you're going to mess it up. Because see, it's a saving strategy. I'm just giving you a superior place to store your liquidity. That's all it is. Not a magic money box, right? It's where do you store your cash? And so we earn it. So here's the framework. I call it the Money for Life framework. Earn it, earn money, bank it, allow it to that, which means save it somewhere that lets you be the bank. What is banking? Just creating a pool of money that you control that can move at cost to meet some needs you have. Borrow it, meaning what you're going to do is you're going to collateralize your savings. It's called cash value in a whole life policy. Spend it, repay it. Now, what do you spend it on? Big ticket items, or the young guy I told about that bought the car, he borrowed $8,000 against the policy and he found a car for $6,000. So now the cash flow is paying back the policy loan, right? And see, but here's the power of it. It's your money is because you're not taking it out the policy, you're collateralizing it. So you're borrowing the insurance company's money. So your money is growing uninterrupted, right? Compound interest works best over time, uninterrupted. So it's still growing, yet you can access it to do other stuff. Whether it's a big ticket item, I've used it to pay estimated taxes, but I don't want to just write a check and then my money's gone forever. So it helps you deal with recapturing opportunity costs. I mean, there's so much stuff with it. And so you just bank it, borrow it, spend it, repay it, right? And then you just watch, rinse, and repeat. And so most of my clients are real estate investors. So we put that. So when they do a cash out or I have them save, they have a job, you got to save 15, 20% of that. If you're saving 15, we may put, 8, 10, 12 of that. We look at your cash flow into a policy, right? Properly structured. So it has early cash value. And then we build that up on to make sure they have the habit, and then we'll use it. Sometimes we've used it to, pay off their credit card debt and recapture the money. I mean, it's like a financial Swiss Army knife. So, but that's the framework of earn money, bank it, borrow it, spend it, repay it. And then what's the problem that this family's having? And then we'll figure out how to apply the money that you're saving. Or if you have money in a lump sum, we can show you how to get it up there and then just not give money away. You know what I mean? You want to be able to have your money work double duty, right? So you can, because it's sitting there, because if you have money in the bank and you take it out, the money's gone, right? So now you got to go back to work, pay more taxes, and fill back up what I call your bucket, your tank. And then you always are putting and taking. You're always are putting and taking. So what if you could put it where your money always grew, but you could access it, pay it back, access it, pay it back. So now we've built a foundation on everything you do that no matter what, you're getting better every year. You're becoming more efficient every year. You can't go back every year. We call that being a wealth creator. And here's a word, guaranteed. Like I come from securities world. You couldn't even get me to play a word game to say guaranteed, right? Back 20 years ago, because I was in mutual funds, and the only thing I can guarantee is you're the only person whose money's at risk. And so what we want to do is I want to build a foundation where you build a house on rock and not sand, so that every year you're getting more profitable. And then once you have savings, guess what? You decide how best to deploy your capital. Do you see an investment that you like? Do you want a mentor program that you want to join? You use this for that, and then use the profit from what you learn to pay yourself back. But meanwhile, because money's got to move, right? Mm-hmm. So with the policy, we talk about velocity of money, but you want, you can create that with the policy. We call it velocity of simultaneous use, right? So utilization, but still having your underlying money grow is another way to create velocity. So it's all that stuff, Michelle. Hope that made sense. But basically, we're using life insurance and it's not new. Banks do it. Right. There's a colleague of mine, Garrett Gunderson, has a book called I think he changed the title, but it used to be called What Would the Rockefellers Do? Or I think it's What Would Billionaires Do? And how they use it. You want to make sure that your wealth, because it is insurance, so you want to make sure that you create a tax-free death benefit on the back end, so that you want to create multi-generational wealth. So it's like the center of your game. It doesn't make you rich. It's just here's where I'm storing my cash, so that when I see something or a bad thing happens, I have access to capital, which is the number one problem that I see out there, Michelle.
Okay. Well, thank you. It is maybe not that hard or complicated, but I think to most people it's pretty misunderstood. So that was
completely misunderstood.
A great explanation. Well, you win the prize because you're the only guest I've ever had on who I completely ignored the clock for, and I'm not going to be able to stay on any longer with you, sadly. But can you tell people about your podcast, how to find you, how to work with you, all the good stuff?
Yeah, so our podcast is called the Practical Wealth Show, and you can also check us out on YouTube and just search that, or search at Curtis May. Our best two places, if you want a lot of information, Instagram, and if you want to get in touch with us, you go to our website, practicalwealth.net. One, in the right corner, there's an orange button that says Be the Bank. You can watch a video lesson that I've recorded and put on there. And then on the show, it's, if you want to reach out, a pop-up will pop up to, get in touch with us, and we'll do a complimentary strategy session, and we'll talk about wherever you want to talk about.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. You are a wealth of information. You're also very entertaining, which I love people who can talk about money in a fun, interesting way. No wonder you have a podcast. I'll be listening.
Interesting. I don't know what y'all are talking about, right?
It is interesting. I agree. But people can make it boring, and you didn't. So thank you. I can't thank you enough for your time. And this was great. And audience, please, check out the podcast, check out Curtis May and his YouTube channel and everything else, and follow him. And And continue to follow me and watch the Money and You show, which you will find every week on all the platforms and YouTube. And so anyway, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. And audience, thank you. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for having me. Have a great day, everybody.